Welcome back to another episode of the Katrina Johnson Show. So happy to have you with me today. Remember to subscribe, share the podcast, leave comments. I would love to hear from you guys. Also, you can follow me online at katrinajohnson.online or on Instagram at I am Katrina Johnson. I thank you again for joining me, and let's get into the show. I am so excited to have Sarai Namurr as my guest today, speaking about how experiencing childhood trauma affects our perception and how to overcome the challenges associated with it. Sarai Namurr is a licensed mental health counselor, CEO, and clinical coordinator of Trinity CMHC out of Miami Lakes, Florida. She holds a Master's of Science in Psychology with distinction and Bachelor of Science in Psychology. She is also the founder of Circle of Champions Worldwide and Thrive Life. She provides individual and couple therapy to help people become the best version of themselves. Her goal is to provide a renewed purpose and meaning in her client's life. Today, I have a special guest for you guys. Her name is Sarai Namurr. And today, we're going to be talking about how experiencing childhood trauma affects our perception and how to overcome the challenges associated with it. Sarai, thank you for joining me today on my podcast. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. So
Yes.
appreciative.
Oh, I'm just really excited because I've been following you online for 2 to 3 years now, and I've become part of your Circle of Champions. I really love that platform that you have and just all the positive information and content that goes out there to people that really need it. So I am just like so excited to be a part of your tribe and really looking forward to getting into this interview.
Awesome. I'm excited. Let's go.
All right, let's get it. All
Thank you for
right,
having
so
me.
um, I just want to start off for the listeners and for myself. Would you mind explaining what you do as a transformational trauma therapist?
Okay. Well, I do a little bit of a lot of different things, but as a trauma therapist, what I do is I help people overcome whatever traumas it is that they've been through, and tr heal from it. But healing, when we talk about healing, healing is not a one and done thing. It's really about it's really like a journey. It's a journey, like we always hear it's a journey, but it actually really is a journey because once you feel that you're healed, there's always like a deeper level of healing and a deeper level of understanding. So it's almost like by layers. I like to think of it that way. And I provide different types of trauma therapy. For children, I do, for example, trauma focused cognitive behavior therapy. There's cognitive process. There's different types of trauma therapy, like the delivery of therapy. But what I really would like to say is that I provide trauma informed services. So I could actually provide a therapy that isn't a trauma therapy, but because I do it in a trauma informed way, it would help the client who has been through whatever type of trauma heal. And for myself, I mostly deal with generational trauma and child complex PTSD, complex childhood trauma.
Awesome.
Um, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish.
I don't, I was gonna say, does that answer the question, or is there a little bit more? I myself don't really have a lot of clients. I own a community mental health center, so what I do is I train my therapists to provide the therapy. But I've been a therapist for 23 years, and
Mhm.
along the way, I would explain that that's the type of therapy that, that I really became passionate about, because as you go, you start figuring out a better way of providing services, and you sort of start falling in love with some passion. There ends up being a passion somewhere, and so my passion is trauma therapy. All therapists don't provide trauma therapy. It just depends on what the therapist passion is.
I see. So you said there's different levels of therapy. or trauma? Did you
Types.
say trauma? Different levels. Okay.
Well, yeah, there's different types of trauma. Not all trauma is generational trauma. Not all trauma is complex PTSD. A type of trauma, complex PTSD is more of the type of trauma that people experience when multiple things have happened to them in their childhood,
Okay.
and it mostly that it has happened through the hands of the people that were meant to take care of them. So it's not only that, but a big part of it has to be that it has happened by the hands of their parents or caretakers, that sort of thing. So, but it could be that they also live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of violence, plus one of their parents could have passed away, plus other things, but then also their caretaker maybe was physically abusive, sexually abusive, neglectful. So all of that creates complex PTSD, and that's really where my specialty lies.
I see. Complex PTSD. So we're going to dive a little bit more into that a little bit as we go. Sorry, as we're doing this interview. I wanted to know what prompted you to get into this field of psychology.
Well, initially, it really just started with me wanting to save people just like me, kids just like me, um, and and the law of attraction really does exist because I went to school. I'm from Miami, but I moved away from Miami basically because I knew I had to sort of escape Miami, and so I got married and moved to California. And then I lived in Kansas, and that's where I ended up getting my bachelor's. But the whole time, what I really wanted was to come back and work with the same exact kids just like me, and I wanted to even work in the same neighborhood. And then I mean, that's going to lead me into a little story. I don't know if you want me to
Okay.
say a little story.
Yeah, first of all, I didn't know you ever lived in California. That's where I'm from.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't long. I lived there for 6 months. I lived there for 6 months, came back, and then left to Kansas. So it wasn't very long. I think it was about 6 to 8 months. I went to
Okay.
San Jacinto Community College.
You went to San Jacinto.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there, isn't that interesting? Okay.
Yeah.
There's three campuses now in this. So you were in
Oh,
the Inland Empire area.
I don't remember the name. I
Wow.
know it was a valley, San
Yeah.
Jacinto.
Okay. That is so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Share more.
Yeah. That was about 30 years ago. But I
Okay.
just wanted, that's really just what I really just wanted. It just was, I guess it was coming from a place of pain. And I think we have a choice. Like either we sit in our pain and just use it as either a crutch or use it as something that continues to hurt us, or we have a choice in using the pain as something to lift us and turn it into our purpose. So without even realizing it, I just turned it into my purpose. I just wanted to help people just like me, and that's what ended up happening. I came back from Kansas, and just out of nowhere, where my grandmother lived, her social worker wanted to meet me just because she found out that I'm just the granddaughter who got a
Mhm.
bachelor's degree. And then she ended up offering me a position at an after school program in the same exact neighborhood and in the same exact place where I grew up, which was incredible. That's why I
Wow.
believe in the law of attraction. So I was like,
Yes,
wow,
ma'am. Yes.
I wasn't even planning that. I was like, what am I going to do with this? And I literally was here about a week. I didn't even know the
Wow.
lady or anything.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, from there, I got my master's degree and I wanted to work with children. So I started working with children. Then I started working with adults. Sorry,
That's okay.
sorry. I was working with children, and then I wanted to work with adults. But what happened is that first it started off with me wanting to work with kids because I think that was my perspective at that time, was as a child, what I went through and what kids go through. And then little by little, I started evolving into just doing trauma informed therapy, which is really for everyone because
Mhm.
it doesn't matter our age, we still have, if we've been through complex trauma, that means we have a wounded little child in all of us,
Yes.
regardless of our age.
Yes. I
So
think
that's
it's
the way
so
it sort of evolved.
right. And what you said about taking that pain and turning it to your purpose, that's so deep. And I resonate with that, which is why I do what I do too. There's some pain. And like you said, I think we all go through things, right? And we could, you know,
We have a
just,
choice.
we have a choice. I always say there's choices. We make choices every day. Um, so talk to me a little bit about what childhood trauma looks like. I think you probably talked about it already a little bit, but
It could look different for everyone. So it could be, for example, the death of of a parent and having to take care of your siblings. So that wouldn't really be abuse. It's not really abuse, but the effects are very, very deep, especially if I've had clients, for example, that the mom had cancer for 3 years, and then the oldest son had to take care of the children, had to drop out of school, and that's very traumatic. And then on top of that, having to lose, their mom. And then there's other situations like myself. I grew up in a home where it was just very chaotic. There was a lot of domestic violence, and then domestic violence is what is that? That's also different from home to home. It's not one thing. For me, it was domestic violence. First, watching my brother, my father basically my mom and my dad physically abused my brother, and then myself as well. That was my mom, and then eventually my brother turned on me, and I had to deal with him for so many years until the point where I realized I had to leave. I had to leave, or
Right.
something serious was going to happen to one of us, because at that
Mm,
point I wasn't, it could have been me killing him. Who knows what could have happened? But
right.
I had to leave. I had to leave. I left. I left within a year. I left to California. I told my mom, that's it, I'm leaving. And then I just kept going. But it could be anything. It could be
Yeah.
physical abuse, sexual abuse. There's a lot of people that are well off financially and they live well, but then they have a lot of emotional and psychological abuse, and they could have neglect. Neglect is what I call the invisible trauma, because it's never really validated, and it could get very confusing for families where there is money and the parents provide everything, but yet they're not around.
Hmm.
um, and it could be very invalidating. It could scar you for the rest of your life and all your relationships. So it's
Right.
really different. For every case is different, every situation is different,
Yeah.
but most importantly, it's like what the person perceives as
Mhm.
being traumatic, because you have four kids in the same home, and they all saw and experienced the same thing, but yet they all experienced it in a different way. So their perception is different, and one could turn out to be in mental health institutions forever, and then another one could end up being a judge who defends and helps kids. So you
Now
never know.
that's,
Like,
yeah, so that's what you mean by perception.
yes, that
How,
that
how, yeah, because that is so, I just love this. That I want you to elaborate a little bit more on that because I always wondered how two people or two children from the same household, one goes down the wrong road and the other one doesn't. And of course, I always say it's a matter of choice. That is still, I think, very important that it's choice. But what else is involved with that? Like, would the perception be that one child perceives this being a problem, so I'm going to do all I can to not, go down that same road, and the other one sees it like I did it affect that one more in a traumatized way? Yeah. So can you explain that a little bit more?
well, the thing is that even though, like, for example, my brother and I lived in the same home and we had the same parents, but yet we didn't have the same parents. And what do I mean by that is my interaction with my parents was different from his interaction with my parents. So then he had his set of parents and I had my set of parents, even though it was the same exact parents. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, got it.
So that's one thing. That's one thing. Then the other thing is it's the perception has to do with the meaning that we give to things. So you and I could look at the same thing and give it a complete different meaning. And then
Mhm.
that meaning gives us an emotion, and it just continues on from that point on. Then there's another experience that adds to that meaning or changes the meaning. So it's almost like chemistry. It doesn't matter if there's different people, different kids perceiving the same thing or receiving the same thing. Their perception is going to be different because of the meaning that they give to it, because of their own past experiences,
Yes.
because of their level of resilience. The resilience is a big one there. Their choices, their personal choices. So
Yeah.
we're not identical, and even if we see the same thing, we're not going to experience it in the same exact way for all those reasons, because we're each different. We think differently, we perceive things differently, we give different meanings to different
Right.
things. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Thank you for breaking that down. Yes, that kind of, yeah, that makes it more clear because that's something that I've always um struggled with in my mind, uh, because of my childhood too, I used to want to not blame myself, but think, well, why did that have to happen to this person? And it didn't happen to me. And there was this guilt feeling. I'm not trying to get too
Oh
deep
yeah.
into it, but there's some things that I've experienced that I've wrestled with. And because of what I've wrestled with these situations, this is one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think you
Exactly.
said something very good, very important. Resilience is one thing. Everybody's different. I think that's the bottom line. Everybody's different, like you
Hmm.
said, is in what they perceive, the resilience, the relationship they actually had with the person, the family member or whatever. So that really makes it a little more clear for me to personally understand that. That was good. Thank you so much.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was
And
going to ask what are some causes of childhood trauma, but I don't know that that's a good question. But I mean, and then again, maybe it is because you said that you particularly deal with generational trauma. So, would generational trauma be, of course, causes of childhood trauma? Do you think this is something that goes on and on and on? If not, check.
yes, yes, it'll go on and on and on until someone decides to stop it. And when that
Right.
person decides to stop it, they actually have the most difficult job because it's extremely painful. It's extremely painful to stop it because you're going against the living people who are part of that generational trauma, who usually don't have didn't have the courage to do what you did. So they're
Mm-hmm.
going against you. You know, usually those people are very avoidant. Usually those people deny and minimize the truth,
Yeah.
and they sort of warp reality, and maybe you were caught up in that warped reality, and then you woke up and now you're fighting against it, but they're pushing you're pushing against them and they're pushing against you. So
Yeah.
it sometimes it causes a lot of family battles. It'll cause you losing those relationships, and that's very difficult. That's very painful. It's also
Mhm.
painful to stop generational trauma because once you're not in that side of minimizing and denial, you have to come to grips with loss, with grieving what could have been. And
Mm.
so much, there's a lot of grief involved in
Yes.
childhood trauma, a
Yes.
lot.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Okay.
And then you said something interesting too. You were talking about the guilt, and I identify with that a lot, which is survivor's guilt. Why wasn't it
Mm.
me? Why, and I dealt a lot with that with my own brother because he even passed away 2 years ago. And to me, it was his death was a result of childhood trauma because he never really healed from it. So
Mm.
he always struggled with depression and mental health and substance abuse and all that.
Right.
And I was always wanting to save him. I'm his older sister, so I was always trying to save him, and I never could. I could never stop what was happening. I couldn't, and of course, it wasn't my responsibility. But as a child, you blame
Take on
yourself.
it. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
take on that responsibility, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So then we
Yeah.
end up people like us who help
Yes.
others. We
Yeah,
end up being
exactly. Right.
we turn it into our mission. We couldn't save, we try to
Exactly.
save whoever we can. So
Right.
it's funny when you
Right.
said that. I identify with that a lot, a lot.
Yes. So you pretty much already talked about the effect of perceptions. Sorry, childhood trauma and the effect it has on people, pretty much. You did mention earlier about different levels of trauma. So what are the different levels? I'm not sure if you said that earlier. So, but
Well, different levels of trauma. For example, there's acute trauma, like for example, someone who general, didn't have doesn't have a lot of trauma in their life, and they're just normal people, and then all of a sudden they go to the store and someone puts a gun to their head and robs them. So that could cause PTSD, and that's called acute PTSD because it's a one-time quick thing where
okay.
there could be long-term effects to it, but more than likely you will end up you already have good support, you'll get help for it, and it'll clear up. Basically, it'll what I mean by clear up meaning your symptoms will clear up pretty fast because it's not something from your childhood. It's very different when it happens in your childhood. That just runs deeper, and especially the younger you are. And that goes back into the whole thing of how it affects different kids in a home.
Mhm.
So, for example, the child that lived through it up until 18 years old, like we have foster kids, a lot of foster kids at my agency, and
Mhm.
say there might be in the home, by the time there's an intervention, there could be a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 18-year-old. So that 18-year-old who had the trauma his entire life is going to have more trauma than, say, the 2-year-old where there was an intervention and didn't sustain it his whole entire life.
I see.
And the reason why also is because when you have childhood trauma from the ages of 0 to 5, you have to remember that your whole body's developing. Your immune system is developing, your brain is developing, your body's developing, your hormonal system is developing. So there's your language, like everything is developing. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're having serious trauma during that time where there's domestic violence, sexual abuse, drug addiction, maybe your parents are on drugs and they pass out and they don't wake up for 10 hours and you're left alone to feed yourself or
Mm,
just sit there on your in your poop. This is literally real things that happen. These kids they don't develop the same, and they're almost cheated because for that reason, because they when they sustain so much of that their brain is on constant fight or flight, and
right.
hormonally their brain is just functioning in a whole different way. You can see it in CAT scans.
Mm,
And if that happens ongoing, they end up it end their brain looks it ends up looking like brain damage in a CAT
mm,
scan.
wow.
So
So,
that's like the deepest level. That would be
that's the deep,
probably the worst and deepest level, but that's common. That's a lot more common than people believe it to be. It's very
sadly to
common.
say, huh?
Hmm.
Wow. Well, do you
Even
think
here.
that people can overcome childhood trauma without therapy? I mean, I guess it would depend on the different levels, right?
It would depend on the different levels. It would depend on how early
Intervention.
they get how early the intervention is. But then there's a lot of research on neuroplasticity and how we could heal ourselves. And
Yes. I'm so
I
interested in that.
yeah.
I am just so interested in that. I mean, it is such an interesting topic. Neuroplasty. Yes, I love that.
That there and I'm that gives hope. That gives hope because originally what happened was there was something called the ACEs study, and the ACEs study sounded like just doom, and it's very real. Which is the more there's a test. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but there's a test that you could take. It's 10 questions, and the higher you score on those questions, the higher the likelihood is that you're gonna die earlier. You'll have
Really?
cancer, CO. Yeah, there's a it's it's one of the most incredible studies ever done, to be honest. But basically, I scored a nine and a half. I
Out
call
of
it nine
what?
and a half out of 10, out
Oh
of 10,
God.
out of 10. Um,
What now?
but
What test is this?
it's the ACES, Adverse
ACEs.
Childhood Experiences Study.
Okay.
And that study is it's scary in terms of that it doesn't even matter. So some people believe like, oh, of course that's going to happen because if you experience so much childhood trauma like that, you're probably going to end up being someone who uses substances or who does things that's not good for your health. But what they
Mhm,
found is that that wasn't true because even people who led healthy lives will still die younger, will still end up with a higher rate of COPD, cancer,
mhm.
heart attack, all these different things. So when I heard that, I really felt like, why don't more people know this? I'm like, I
Yeah.
need to do commercials about this.
Right.
But then the hope, and it is terrible like news, but the good news is that here comes neuroplasticity and the fact that we're able to teach our brains. It's almost like training. You could train your brain and grow new pathways
Uh-huh.
in your brain, and you could change it, and you could also you could heal yourself through martial arts. That's
Mhm.
probably the best one. That's what they find to be the best one to help you heal
Wow.
your traumatized body, because our
Okay.
body is the one that holds the trauma. So, for example, mentally, I could have processed all my experiences and done all the work, but then I'll give you an example of myself. But then physically, my kids will like moonwalk. I say they moonwalk up to me, and then I don't even hear them coming, and they tap me, and I turn around and I feel like punching them. So I like jump, or I'm very hyper vigilant. So all
Okay.
of that is like those are body symptoms
Yeah.
that is part of your nervous system. But
Hmm.
you have to heal your nervous system. You're not going to do it through your mind. You have to heal your nervous system by retraining your body through
Hmm.
yoga, through doing
Hmm.
different these types of body movements that actually do help you with your nervous system and retraining your mind and
Oh,
calming it. And
great.
actually, martial arts is one of the best ones. I don't know if you knew that,
I
but martial
never,
arts is
no, I never knew that. Never heard of that. Wow. So that was
it's
gonna,
number
that
one.
kind of leads me to the next question. I was gonna say, ask you what practical steps can one implement to overcome the effects of childhood trauma? So you just named a few of them.
Yeah, you have to make it extremely intentional. The
Mhm.
self-care, self-care is like this, self-care, and people don't, self-care is absolutely necessary, and self-care is an action, and
Mm.
self-care has to be scheduled. It has to be taken serious because
Yes.
along with self-care goes healing. There's no
Mhm.
healing without self-care. There's no healing without prioritizing your health.
Yes.
And your health is all. It's not just eating and working out.
Right.
It's not just that. It's
The
taking
whole
care of
body,
yourself,
the whole body.
mind, body, spirit.
Very
Because trauma affects us at multiple levels. It also affects us spiritually. It's not
good.
just our mind and our emotions and our body. I just mentioned mind, body, and emotions, but it also affects us spiritually because it affects our perception of the world. Like
Yes.
spiritually, we lose hope and we don't trust people, and we perceive our whole perception changes if
Yeah.
we don't heal every part of it.
Right.
And I do believe very strongly in education, like information.
Hmm.
Information is the beginning of it. From
Yes.
uh, like even myself, I didn't even really heal until way past I even got a master's degree and I was already working. I still
Hmm.
wasn't healed.
Hmm.
What healed me was really personal development, just really
Yes.
learning and learning and learning.
I love it.
And I wasn't even learning stuff related to psychology. I was learning just I was learning things about being human.
Yes,
Humans.
ma'am. Because my slogan, information plus inspiration equals transformation. So
Oh
I
wow,
agree
yes.
100% with that. It was the information that I started learning, the information I was seeking that began to change the way I thought and began my self improvement journey. And it's all
I love
about, and
that.
self
Wow.
improvement is self care. I've never heard
Yes,
anybody put it like that, but self improvement is self care.
it
So
is
you're
100%. Yes,
absolutely
and it's
right.
healing.
So
And
I was,
I love
yeah,
how you said information plus inspiration because I think it is information, and the inspiration for me is divine inspiration.
mm,
It's you learning to trust again,
yes,
you learning to have that hope again,
yes.
and believing in a higher power, because that's
Absolutely.
another thing that's lost with trauma.
Wait,
Like a lot, you hear so many people say, "Oh, there was a God. How would he allow this?"
right.
You
But
know?
only they knew. You wake up every morning because there is a God. Period. so so then I would say I was going to ask you if healing from childhood trauma is a lifelong journey.
I'm going to say yes. That does not mean that you have to spend your whole life in pain to get to this. It's not a pinnacle place. It's not like a place where you land. It's I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's almost like an evolution.
Hmm.
Healing is, and so I have it's almost like you're evolving and expanding, and so I call that healing as well. Even if even if you haven't been through a lot of things, just I think healing is just a part of life. Healing from last week. It doesn't have to be just
Yes.
childhood trauma.
Right.
So I think it's about when I say healing, I really mean health. So healing for me is a lifelong journey because it's about always seeking health and seeking a healthy lifestyle so that we have the energy to do the things that we need to do and fulfill our purpose in life. So
Hmm.
when I say healing, I mean healing a deep wound, but I also don't mean that. I also mean more than that.
Yes.
And that's why I call it like a lifelong journey.
Yes.
And there's always something and a better level of health that we could all have. I don't know if that
Absolutely.
helps, if that answered the question.
Yes, it
But
does.
anyway, regarding symptoms, if we talk about like symptoms, like PTSD symptoms and trauma symptoms,
Hmm.
you don't need a lifetime to get rid of those.
Hmm.
Because, for example, I don't have those symptoms anymore. I had them for a long time. My entire 20s, I was having panic attacks, and I had so many issues. And then in my 30s, it was less, and then in my 40s, it was less. And I don't have those issues anymore. Actually, right now is I'm really like I was crippled by fear for so many years, and I don't have that anymore in my life. But I'm still on the healing journey. I will still tell you I'm on the healing journey, even if even if I don't have those symptoms, because the
Right,
healing for me is always find looking for health.
right.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. We are always healing, like you said, even if it is from last week,
Yes.
there's always something to heal from. That's awesome. We are at the end of this, and I want you to share some words of inspiration with the audience, whatever
Okay.
you want.
So I'm going to share what this has to do with more with the other side of the coin. So we have the side of trauma, but then we have the side of greatness. And I'm
Yes.
all about unleashing your greatness. And what I want to leave everyone with is understand that the person you had to become to survive is not the person you have to become to live out your dreams and unleash your greatness. So that's basically what I want to say. Notice the parts of you that developed from a place of survival, and very consciously say thank you to those parts because they did help you survive. But then turn the other way and start developing the parts of you that need to be developed for you to create the life that you really, really want to live. Thank you.
Awesome. Unleash your greatness, you guys. You have to do that because there's greatness in each and every one of us.
Yes.
Well, Miss Sarai, I thank you so much for coming on. I want you to tell people where they can find more out about Circle of Champions worldwide and Trinity Community Mental Health, your center there, and where to find you online.
Well, all over online, you're gonna find me at Sarai Namurr. And my agency is here in Miami Lakes, Florida. And Circle of Champions Worldwide is a nonprofit that I developed for the other side as well, to spread hope, positivity, to teach people about positive psychology and overcoming. And that's a group, a Facebook group that I have on Facebook. And you could just find us there, Circle of Champions Worldwide. And we'll be having pretty soon the Unleash Your Greatness third annual virtual event. And that will be the last week of May. I think you'll be a speaker on it. I think we said
Yes, yes, I'm looking
yes.
forward to that. Awesome.
Awesome.
Well,
Well,
thank you
thank you so much
again.
for having me. Thank you
You
so much
are
for having me.
welcome. And I'm going to have you
You're
back
welcome.
sometime down in the future if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, of course. We'll talk about the other side.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you again, Sarai.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Let's keep the conversation going by emailing me at katrina@katrinajohnson.online. That's katrina@katrinajohnson.online. So grateful that you joined me on this episode. Remember, information plus inspiration equals transformation. And until next time, stay inspired.